as we get started here. Per usual, we will be sharing the slides and the recording with you right after the webinar. If you would like to use the GoToWebinar console to ask us questions throughout, please feel free to do so. You'll see a questions box right there in the GoToWebinar panel. We're going to try and answer as many of those as we possibly can at the end. If there are things that are super relevant to the current conversation, I'll try and weave that in as the other folks are talking as well. Today, we're going to be talking about how you can take control of your application ecosystem and leverage the apps that your business relies upon to drive innovation and efficiencies. We're going to be talking a little bit about how you need to think about managing these applications, a new approach to taking control of your app ecosystem, some of the challenges that historical approaches perhaps have. And then we have a special guest today from 2080 that's going to be talking through a specific example of the work they have done within their organization to improve some various operational efficiency business processes. So it is my pleasure to welcome the Chief Information Officer at 2080, Mike Casulo. Thanks for coming today, Mike.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And I also have with us today our co-founder and CEO, Mark Genie.
Thanks, Ross. Great to be here. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. What I'm going to cover is why we founded Cloud Elements. This challenge that enterprises and software companies are faced with to be able to connect this myriad of applications together that represent what we call the application ecosystem. And I'm going to provide a little context and background around that. We founded Cloud Elements. We launched our product in 2015, and it was really based on our experience of trying traditional integration approaches, point-to-point integration, and finding that it didn't scale with the breadth of integration that we needed to do at my previous software company. And so that led us to build the industry's really first 100% API-based integration platform. And what drove us on this front was that we were seeing enterprises being powered back that time by dozens of applications, which has now become hundreds, even thousands of applications. A recent survey by Gartner estimated that the typical enterprise knows of 1,000 applications that they're using to run their business, and probably many, many more that people are bringing with their own application. And this is all driven by that fragmentation of software markets, right? You now have the MarTech stack with over 8,000 applications. I saw something recently. I did a presentation at FIS's Fidelity Investor Services Conference, where 12,000 fintechs now, right, that have started up. So every aspect of the software chain has been fragmented, and this has led to a rapid proliferation of APIs, right? Each of those applications themselves have tens to hundreds of APIs. And each one of those APIs is different and unique. And so it's wonderful that everything in your enterprise now can be connected together. But the challenge is you don't have enough resources to do that, right? What we've found over and over again is even if you're a software publisher, the table stakes are to have an API, or if you're building a platform for a digital transformation initiative, the table stakes are to have that API available and published. But the problem is on the other end, the consuming side of that API, there's not developers just sitting around at your customers or partners ready to write to those APIs. So hence, the world is overwhelmed. And the challenge is that it's not just about your own internal applications that need to be connected together. Your clients are looking for you to connect to the applications they use to run their business to create more seamless user experiences. And that's part of your ecosystem, right? As we talk about that, is what are the applications that your partners and customers and prospective customers are using to run their business as well. And so that, this application infrastructure, right? It's held together by APIs, right? That's I love this quote by Gartner, right? APIs are the concrete that holds everything together. And I like to say that's the potential to hold everything together. The key is, how do you execute on that when you're dealing with so many applications? And typically, it may, based on our recent survey from the state of the API integration survey report. I lost that for a minute. Anyway, what's interesting is the average time to complete an API integration that we've heard from the respondents in this survey is 41 days. And the challenge is, if you're doing integration on a traditional point-to-point basis, right, connecting that account object from Salesforce into the customer object of Oracle, and then you add, let's say, Marketo into the mix, and you're going to connect into the company object at Marketo. Each one of those is taking days and days to do, but now you start adding more endpoints into that, and you have what I affectionately call the point-to-point integration hairball, right? This very difficult to maintain and scale structure that, again, doesn't scale with your business. It doesn't scale with the applications you've added or the ecosystem that you need to connect to by doing that traditional point-to-point type of approach. So that leads us to this construct of an application ecosystem. And so if you look at the challenge that you and your customers face, it's not just about integrating within your company, right? Within that sphere here of just internal to your company, but your business has to coexist with the applications used by your customers, your partners, your prospective customers. That's your application ecosystem. And what Ross is going to talk about is, how do you take charge of that ecosystem, right? How do you put yourself at the center of it and are able to make it all work together to create new experiences for your customers, to be able to provide more efficiency in your digital transformation initiatives, to re-engineer processes for your customers. All of that can occur by bringing this ecosystem together and connecting your world of applications that you exist with. So what I'd like to do is turn it over to Ross, and you can talk more about how you go about bringing together your application ecosystem in a more modern way than that point-to-point integration construct that we talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mark. As we've said, this growing landscape of applications that make up your ecosystem today are representing themselves each in a very different way. Each application, as Mark says, has an API or a number of APIs, and each of those APIs represents a set of data that is fundamentally different from one platform or application to the next. Even though in some cases they're conceptually supporting or helping you manage similar pieces of data, functionally they look different, and that becomes a fundamental challenge as the number of apps that you continue to manage grows. With these islands of data, we need a fresh approach to think differently about how we integrate these various applications together. We've been saying for some time that the historical or legacy patterns that organizations have typically utilized is really just scratching the surface. It's just the tip of the iceberg, where we're connecting applications together, but we haven't gone far enough to have a full and deep integration between the apps that we're using. And so when we think about bringing together this application ecosystem, you need to think about it more than simply connecting to an API. That's just the first step, and that is the most trivial. That's the easy part. It's all of the stuff that sits beneath the tip of the iceberg that's actually the complicated part. Integrating completely, thinking about how you're going to handle authentication across hundreds or thousands of applications. What does the data model look like in your version of Salesforce versus that of your customers? Perhaps you've acquired businesses over time, and each of them have slightly different ways of organizing and managing their data and different applications. You need an integration strategy that allows you to take control of all of that, your entire ecosystem, and think more critically about how you're going to bring together these various services. As Mark said, in the past, it's been easy to think about integration in terms of a point-to-point model, where you only have a handful of things. I buy half my software from SAP and half my software from Oracle, and I can quite simply leverage a point-to-point integration pattern in that world. That's not the world we live in today, however. And that point-to-point pattern becomes increasingly brittle as your application ecosystem scales upwards. It's costly to continue to manage it, and you can't really gain all of the benefits of those applications when you don't have a good way to understand how data is moving between, to, and from a growing number of apps. What we really want is a one-to-many approach, something that can allow us to focus on what really matters inside our businesses today. And ultimately, that's less about the application, the actual apps themselves, and more about the data inside those applications. And this is where a one-to-many approach really helps you scale upwards. If I think about the data that's common between applications, then I can start to manage that more effectively and onboard new applications more simply. So using Mark's example again here, thinking about this point-to-point world, this quickly spiderwebs into a mess. But if we thought about the problem more critically and thought about, well, what are the things that are common between applications, then we can start to get a much better holistic perspective across all of the apps that are in your ecosystem. At Cloud Elements, we call this a virtual or virtualized data hub, basically giving us a window into the data that's important to your business, even though it's spread now across hundreds or thousands of applications. And when we add a new app to this ecosystem, it's a matter of adding one new integration point rather than n-1. In other words, it's much simpler. There's it's hundreds of times cheaper, potentially, to add applications on an ongoing basis rather than having to manage hundreds or thousands of these point-to-point integrations. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is allow you to focus on the things that your business cares most about, the business data that makes you different. Whether you use Salesforce or Dynamics is largely unimportant. It's the customer data, the opportunity data, the leads data that's inside those applications that really matters. And so we want you to be able to focus on that and build up an integration strategy that leans on the things that are most important to you. It's your data where the value really lies. Of course, this is really just the foundation because, in actual fact, technology is there to serve a business problem, and actually we think about the problems that many businesses face today in the context of these four pillars, and I'm just going to talk to them a little bit and then pass it over to Mike because he's got some concrete examples of where he's seen efficiencies and optimization. Thinking first about transactional efficiency, we've seen this to be true in many industries today, that we're moving increasingly away from a file-centric way of doing business, where I do it at the end of a day, or at the end of the week, or at the end of a month, perhaps, to a real-time API-centric model. That gives us a real-time view of the business. I can see cash flow in almost real time. I can see order information in almost real time by moving towards an API-centric pattern and away from this legacy file-based interaction that many businesses still rely upon today. So this is certainly step one, and Mike will talk to us a little bit more about how they've started to leverage the API-enabled products they use today. The next one is really this idea of optimizing the various business processes that really make our various organizations operate, right? This is maybe just a small subset of the things that you do day to day, managing accounts receivable and accounts payable, opportunity to quote, managing your people resources from the day you hire them to the day they retire. There are a vast array of business processes here that have been historically manual, that we can automate, and we should, because people don't want to solve these problems. Machines can do this much more effectively, and using an application integration platform that will allow you to, an API integration platform that will allow you to bring these various apps together and manage these business processes for you is really where your business needs to be. This, of course, then starts to lead us into more transformative models for you as a business, allowing you to build new types of applications and ultimately deliver new customer experiences, new customer journeys that will delight and excite your users, customers, partners, and your internal users, your employees as well. We want to be able to think about changing the game. What are the ways that we can take an old and very broken process and make it an automated and seamless one? And integration can be really fundamental to this. I'm showing an example from another customer of ours, Western Union, where they have a global B2B payments network that is integrated to the buyers and sellers accounting platforms, making it easy for them to see the process of buying and selling goods and services in a single pane of glass without having to swivel between applications, without having to duplicate data entry, and then also being able to gain all the efficiencies that come along with that. And then finally, this notion of being able to think towards the future. I think in all parts of a modern business today, we're trying to get away from simply reporting on what has happened and move towards predicting what might happen. And Mike's going to talk a little bit about that as well. This is really where the special sauce of application integration exists. If you can start to predict when you will see revenue, when certain business events will happen, then you have a much better handle on how your business is functioning. And that's how we compete in a modern era. That's how you stay ahead of the competition. And that's certainly one of the things that Mike's going to talk about in relation to 2080. Of course, all of this comes together within a platform here at Cloud Elements we call our virtualized API integration platform. I'm not going to give you a whole lot of detail on this right now. We'll summarize at the end some of the things that really stand out as being key enablers for you to take control of your application ecosystem. But I'm going to pass it to Mike now for him to just tell us a little bit about 2080, tell us about the problem as it existed when you started this process and where you're going with it and the success you've had so far.
Right. Thank you, Ross, and thank you for having me. So 2080 is a portfolio of some of the most respected learning and development performance improvement brands globally. Here you see a list of the companies within the portfolio: Miller Heiman, Vital Smarts, Achieve Forum, and Strategy Execution, all of which take full advantage of the use of Cloud Elements. And we did the first slide. We did say a case study, and this truly is a case study because we started at a very fundamental level. We didn't even have a year and a half ago. We didn't even have a global ERP or CRM platform to even build upon, and that has been since completed. And once we completed that, we were able to layer on application integration through the use of Cloud Elements. So the slide. So early on, we saw a true need for process optimization. In other words, we had in place of what we had today, it was all manual. All the data that was being moved between these applications was manual. It was error prone. It was very difficult, if not impossible, to report. And now we have that problem solved because we're able to. All these transactions are fully integrated from, say, our our lead generation application, Marketo, through Salesforce, all the way to cash in our global ERP, NetSuite. The issues that we saw prior to our Cloud Elements integration, we had multiple systems in production. We removed and collapsed and consolidated many of those. All of our manual processes were, for the most part, undocumented. Monthly invoice and cash collection were impacted. We didn't have a view on how we could improve that efficiency. And since then, as I mentioned, we were able to focus on deploying NetSuite as our ERP. We eliminated a lot of legacy. We removed 4 legacy ERP applications for one NetSuite, and we focused on ERP, CRM, system integration, which we've completed, and we'll get into some detailed metrics here. The process optimization, this is a slide that gives a good summary view of what we have in place today. So as mentioned, we have a lead in our lead generation system, Marketo, and that's moved to an order within Salesforce. And then through that integration, we were able to move that data into cash and eventual invoicing with NetSuite. And this is all in place today with the use of Cloud Elements. And then we also, we're able to take the data that we had, the baseline data that we had before we had these systems in place and fully integrated, and we're able to measure up against that now to have some true metric differentials to show you. Move on to the next slide. So this is again another example of where we have the sales lead. We convert that into a contract, an eventual opportunity, and then we generate the order in NetSuite. And this is an example of the reduction in cost through the use of Cloud Elements that we've seen. And this is a financial metric. This metric comes from our financial department. And again, through the use of Cloud Elements, we were able to reduce the cost of this one particular business process by 57%. And that's really by eliminating manual processes in place of full integration, again, from Marketo to Salesforce all the way into NetSuite. The next slide talks about, this is the order to cash. So this is the Salesforce order is moved through the Cloud Elements interface to NetSuite. And then here, what we've seen is a 35% reduction in time. So the work that was done by the group that handled these sales orders saw a 35% efficiency, primarily in time reduction, because a lot of that work was that manual work was eliminated for Cloud Elements integration. And this slide is an interesting slide because I wasn't expecting this. I was talking to a person in our finance department, and what I was able to do, and I've done this throughout this whole Cloud Elements deployment, was to overlay, our deployments. Every time we released new technology, new integrations into production, I was able to overlay our ability to collect cash with those deployments. And this was one that was highlighted. So in the month that we went live with full integration between Salesforce and NetSuite, we saw over the next month and a half to 2 months, we saw a 24% increase in our ability to collect cash. And that ability, and there's a few components behind that. One is, well, our invoice accuracy. We saw an increase in our ability for first-time invoices to be more accurate than they were in the past. And again, this is all attributed to elimination of manual processes, complete elimination. We often talk about improving business processes. Well, in this case, we've gone past that step of improvement and we've removed them. And by removing them, we've removed all the inherent challenges of managing those business processes. So a 24% increase in our ability to collect cash, available cash, for the month, for the quarter, was huge. And that's all attributed directly to that integration between ERP and CRM.
Thanks, Mike. I think, as we look at this, right, it's very clear that there are true business metrics that make, integration and taking control of all of the apps that your business now relies upon really important. Right? This is not just a technology solution. This is driving success for your company in terms of real dollars. Like a 24% increase in collections represents, I'm presuming, a significant amount of money on a monthly or quarterly basis.
Yeah, I compared those numbers to a year ago and saw, a significant increase. But you're right, Cloud Elements, for me, was a true business solution. I know you're a technology company, a great technology company, but I like measuring, the technology impacts that we deploy with a financial metric, because once you do that, it's kind of game over, right? It's hard for anyone to argue with a decision, with a choice. We've been able to prove that, so we've seen it. We've seen it directly.
Yeah. Just whilst I gather up some of the questions from the audience, just to sort of summarize then where Cloud Elements is really stepping in and helping, right? We think about this problem in three key ways. The first is how you can normalize how you integrate these various applications, bringing together the differences between apps and APIs so that developers don't have to carry all of the burden of figuring out how to integrate these things together. We then think about your data, right? We talked about this, focusing on the data that you care most about, and giving you a virtual window into that so that in 2080's case, they have a particular understanding of what an order is and what an invoice is, and that might be different for other organizations. You can decide how you want to structure that. It's your choice, not Cloud Elements, not Salesforce, not NetSuite. It's your choice. And then, of course, being able to orchestrate these various processes together. So we think of solving this problem in these three key steps. If anybody has questions around that, I'd be very happy to answer them. I'm going to first ask Mike, perhaps, to maybe tell us, looking at all the things that you've achieved so far, what's your roadmap? What do you think you're going to try and tackle next? Are there other things, other applications you're looking at procuring? Where are you going?
Yeah. Thanks, Ross. No, that's a great question, because a year and a half ago, I never even thought of being in the position we are in today. I was squarely, the team, and by the way, we have a great information technology team within 2080 that partners really well with the Cloud Elements team that Mark has here. But we've so once we got those baseline applications installed, and then we were able to layer on Cloud Elements, to that first phase of consolidation. Yeah, we moved on with other applications within the ecosystem. DocuSign is the most recent one. We use DocuSign for client sign up to various classes, and that's fully integrated now with through the use of Cloud Elements. And we have a couple other business units that we're going to also move to the ERP to CRM integration. That's coming up.
Okay, thank you. Maybe, Mark, you could tell us, like, how should an organization get started? Like, what should they think about as they begin this journey? Perhaps they've struggled with other vendors in the past.
Yep. Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that going back to those patterns that we talked about, right? The first is like Mike did, right? Pick a business process, right? In his case, it started with order to cash, then it moved all the way from lead to order to be able to optimize. Now he's adding other things around that process, like you were mentioning earlier, forecasting, right? Improving, now being able to go forecast from opportunity to cash and become predictive on it. So if you look at those patterns, right, Mike started with, some transactional efficiency, re-engineered entire processes, now is moving to a predictive analytics approach, right, with the forecasting mechanism now that you have this data integrated and tied together. But it all, starts with just picking a initial process to optimize, right? And start there, and then you can keep adding more and more to it. As an example, I think of a very successful example at 2080.
Yeah, and actually that plays quite nicely into one of the next questions from the audience about, how does this one-to-many relationship remain adequate when the data itself might change over time?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Part of the tooling that we've really spent I'd say a core part of our IP building is the ability to transform all sorts of data payloads and create representations at multiple levels in an organization. So just like 2080, right, they have 4 different divisions, right? Well, each division has a different view of what a customer is. But 2080 has a common view across their business. So they have an organizational view, but it can customize to various divisions and then tailor down to individual users. So what we believe is there's not just one source of truth from a data structure perspective, but that it needs to live at multiple levels in your organization and inherit some of the defaults. Oh, these are the 10 fields I need to make sure I can see a customer accurately across the entire business. But it doesn't matter if the Miller-Hyman division has 300 fields on that, they can add to it and have a richer experience. And so you define what is really important across all my business entities, and then let customization happen where it needs to, because that's what the SaaS world is so good at, right?
Absolutely.
Allowing you to customize and tailor your data.
Yeah. The one thing that I would add to that is, is thinking about one of the core problems we have with the proliferation of applications is that the data is different from one app to another, and managing that can become a challenge over time. There is very little governance that's built into the applications themselves, and so you can't really check which data is flowing to or from a given application. By defining your view of the data and managing that, then you inherently get some data governance by default. You get to decide which data fields are actually moving around and going from which application to another.
Yeah, by creating that virtualized representation, right, that the ability to have a virtual view of what a customer object, a product object, a contact object, whatever it might be, you can, and then have tooling that can transform it to the physical world. But if you can represent and deal with that virtual representation, the technology is capable of transforming it into wherever it physically exists, whether it's in NetSuite or SAP or whatever structure that is. And that's where we've, I'd say a big part of our secret sauce is to be able to enable that transformation from that virtual representation to the physical.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that about wraps up the questions that we have from the audience for today. Maybe one more. There's a final question. What enhancements for the platform is Cloud Elements bringing to market? Well, there's always new exciting things. I will be very excited to share with customers and prospects a new product offering called Conductor in the coming weeks, we actually pre-announced the alpha release of this product just a few weeks ago, and we'll be gradually adding beta users to this product towards the end of the month. Conductor is an entirely new integration experience within our product, designed to provide all of the power of a robust API integration to users that aren't necessarily API developers and JavaScript experts. And this is a really fundamental challenge. In order to solve the types of problems, business processes that 2080 has been dealing with, you quite often have to get into the nitty-gritty details of how these applications actually work, right? Data from one app to another doesn't just magically map together. There's work that has to get done, and allowing more users to do that work with more visual tooling is one of the key objectives for our Conductor product. So I'm super excited to share that with everybody starting in July. And then another key area for us, kind of leaning on this notion of data governance and control, is thinking about security. API and integration security should be something that your integration platform treats as a first-class citizen. You should be able to define the controls you want, not the endpoint apps. And you should be able to have total control of the privileges that you're allowing API consumers to realize through the integration platform. We're going to be focused a lot on that over the course of this year, and again, I'll be sharing more details of that in our fall release of the Cloud Elements platform. With that, I guess all that's left for me to do is thank Mike for joining us today. I really appreciate it. It's always great to have you. And thanks, Mark, for joining us today as well. If there are any questions that we didn't get to, please feel free to reach out via Twitter or email. We will, just as a reminder, be sending you the slides and the webinar and my correct pronunciation of words like proliferation later. If you'd like to continue the conversation, always reach out to us on Twitter. We're happy to chat to you. Thanks for joining this morning. I appreciate your time, and we will host another webinar very soon. Thank you.